So welcome to the Founders Odyssey podcast, where we create a world-class network to help educate, inspire, and create a supportive community for our fellow founders. Today, we are joined by sales maverick, entrepreneur, and business leader, Jordan Boogaard. His immense passion to transparently connect with others and identify their needs has developed him into one of the most sought-after sales professionals in the HR industry. His service-minded, customer-centric approach to providing valued solutions for his customers allows for him to separate himself from the competition. Sitting at the helm and acting as president of sales for Eddy HR Jordan has refined his skills to excel in providing superior customer service and results for his customers. His ability to explain complex information with the ease and seamless communication and minimal confusion for his customers is one of his strong suits. Jordan, welcome to the Founders Odyssey podcast today.
Thank you. Excited to chat with you today, Nathan.
Absolutely, me as well. So today we want to touch on some areas of expertise that you have, such as sales, team, leadership, motivation. Like, how do you gain motivation, right, as a sales leader? And how do you pump your team up in order for them to meet their specific goals, right? So let's just start right now with what got you interested in business.
I guess when I was a little kid, my dad was an entrepreneur. So that's probably where it all started and taught me how to work hard. He owned anything from a furniture store to doing upholstery in our garage to he started a floor cleaning business. And so at the age of 13, my dad would wake me up at the crack of dawn at, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'd have to go scrub the stores and buff them and clean the bathrooms before they opened up. And then again at night when they closed at 9 o'clock, I do the exact same thing. And so I guess ever since I was a little kid, I saw that entrepreneurism and just kind of how it works to work for yourself and to manage people. And I was inspired by that. And it was always something I wanted to do. So
that brings a great topic. Let's talk about ethics and the work ethic that is created from somebody who sees another person doing what they want to follow. Let's talk a little bit about what you portray to the people that you lead and how that work ethic can flow from you to the other people.
Yeah, that's a great topic. Is there a question in particular, or just kind of how I see myself trying to be that example, or what are you thinking here?
Yeah, what is the leadership ability or the skill set or the way that you lead your organization or people that will then install that work ethic that you were once taught?
Yeah, I guess the biggest thing is titles don't matter to me. And so my title for on LinkedIn or with my company may be president of sales, but in all reality at this specific moment, because what's needed in Eddy, because we're in super growth mode, is I'm a sales rep. Like, I'm in the trenches. I have a quota that I'm hitting, and I'm being that leader and showing by example. And so I would say that if you're not willing to put in the work yourself and prove that you can do it, and let people follow that, then there's probably an issue, right? And so I truly believe in leading by example. And so I hope right now, as I'm, hitting my numbers and sometimes doubling those numbers and doing everything I can to set meetings from cold calling to networking to taking inbound leads, just like any other sales rep within the company, even though I may be president of sales, is showing them that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to lead by example right now.
So for those of you out there that are listening to this podcast, that right there is a great nugget to make sure that you can jump in as a servant leader and provide by example the ways to do things. And then you guys all together as a group will arise. So let's talk a little bit about, that actual aspect of outbound calls, reaching out to people, and how you start to build rapport in relationship with people. That's one of the biggest things that we see, trying to build a company. So talk about your kind of theory or ways that you really want to develop that relationship.
Yeah, great question. Honestly, I don't do a ton of outbound stuff. I focus more on, I guess, marketing myself is how you say it, right? And so I worked for a company called Heartland about 5-6 years ago, and all I did was network. I'd take people to breakfast, people to lunches, and I wouldn't focus on the business aspect of it. I'd focus more on the human aspect of it, on how can I help you, right? That's like my hashtag I always put after I post anything on LinkedIn. But I think by like reaching out to people and finding out what their needs are and trying to solve those and help them, that karma plays a huge role and will always come back to you. And so my focus always has been for that outbound is kind of marketing myself as the person that wants to help people, because that's truly what I believe in. And by doing that, people have reached out. I built amazing relationships with huge, multi-billion-dollar companies by doing it. Most recently, like we just partnered with Divvy and we're on like their toolbox and stuff like that. But that came from me taking people to lunch, reaching out to them, finding ways to help them. And so my outbound approach is not like cold calling per se, but it's reaching out to find ways to help them. And by doing that, it's paid back tenfold. So it's been awesome.
Talk about the person who's sitting there and they really want to make that jump to being a success, and they're feeling a little uncomfortable inside, right? What would you say to that person that wants to make that next step in their career? And how do you think they should go about that?
Yeah, no, it's tough. I mean, I would say the key thing is vulnerability, right? Like you're going to be vulnerable no matter what. And so the more you sit there and stress about it and worry about it and contemplate like what's going to happen if I do this or what would happen if I do that, you kind of have to just jump in with 2 feet and go for it. And so if you really want to take those next steps, I mean, obviously sit down, map out a plan, and then jump in with 2 feet, not one. Don't go partially. You got to go full force and do everything you can to accomplish that goal. You can't just sit back and worry about it, because there's always going to be things that go wrong. You're always going to make mistakes. You're going to fall flat on your face. But if you're stressed about that, it's going to impede you from moving forward and being successful. And so I would say the best advice I can give is just jump into it with 2 feet and go for it. So
sounds like that would be advice that you would give younger Jordan. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I guess when I was younger, I never thought I would start my own business or be even where I am today and starting a huge like global company. I mean, it's pretty impressive what we've done with Eddy in the last 4 years. And I've been a part of it for 2, because I merged with him when I sold my company and partnered with him. But with that being said, I mean, yeah, I mean, I wish I wouldn't have worried about things as much as I did in the past and been kind of a pessimist to be 100% vulnerable with you today. But yeah, get in there with 2 feet and go for it, man. So good things.
I love that advice. Continuing to stay motivated, even though, sometimes you'll reach adversity and things like that. Let's touch on an adverse situation that you had overcome and that you feel very proud of, overcoming that. A lot of people have gone through different things, and I'd like for our audience to really derive some of that from you as a founder. There's a lot of adversities that can come, vendor relationships that didn't work out, cap tables that weren't properly set. I don't know. You'd have to tell me some of the things that you've encountered, but how you've overcame.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good one. I mean, business wise, I'm sure I have a lot, but I would, the first thing that came to my mind when you asked that question is more personal, but it's affected my entire life. And so when I first got married, I was 2 weeks in, and my wife and I got in a head-on car collision. And so I, broke every bone in my body. I spent 3 months in the ICU without going into much detail. I mean, I should have died like 5 or 6 times. But I mean, I've always been athletic and loved to play sports and work out, play basketball, tennis, all sorts of things. And so when this happened, I mean, I shattered my ankle, and again, not going too far into the woods with what happened, but I mean, it messed up my body completely, and I couldn't run, I couldn't play basketball, I couldn't do a lot of those things. And so I had to just truly pivot and focus on the positive and look at the things that I could do. And so I got obsessed with mountain biking. And with that, it's built amazing relationships. I've done an excursion. As before we started the podcast, it sounds like you're doing a fun retreat with some couples. But I took groups down and we did an excursion down in Moab, Utah, and went mountain biking. And so I built amazing business relationships on. But if I would have focused on the negative and all the things that happened because of the car accident and the things that I couldn't do anymore, and focus on that kind of pessimistic or negative attitude, or I guess it really relates to a book I read called The Oz Principle. I don't know if you guys have read that, but it's about the Wizard of Oz characters and how they always complain about, if I only had a heart, if I only had a brain, if I only had this. And every single character complained about something that they wish they would have had, and they basically blame their life on it. But anyways, there's a lot of things that I could have blamed that car accident from stopping me from doing almost anything in my life. but I actually took it and focused on the positive and made it into something better. And now I use a lot of those things that I can do for business and for my personal life that's completely turned me around. And so when you say like when you're focusing on those things that have changed in business, I would focus on not looking at the other people and pointing fingers, but more focusing on your inner self and looking in the mirror and determining who you really are and what you can do in the future, and not blaming it on other people or situations. So that was kind of a long-winded answer.
Nah, that
Probably
was
not direct, but I hope
perfect.
that helps. Yeah.
I think that helps tremendously. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that there's a lot of founders actually that have gone through life altering situations that have completely changed their perspective on life, right? So then they go harder into whatever area that they're really working on to then continue to break through those adversities. I know for a fact I did break my wrist, and when I went for a dunk once, was playing basketball, it completely
Awesome.
transformed really the trajectory of my career too. So I don't want to get into too much about what I'm about here, but I just appreciate that openness for us. So let's go back into relationships, and I think that's
Yeah.
really important. It's what shapes where we're at and what we're doing. So I want to hear your take on just what does relationship mean to you? I know we've went into a little bit and how you've been able to create good relationships, but is there a way that you have or that you do in order to develop those stronger, deeper relationships with people?
Yeah. So I mean, relationships are kind of who I am, right? It's who I surround myself with. And I'm super blessed, whether it's my personal life or business life, to be surrounded by pretty amazing people, from my family to my coworkers. I'm a super lucky individual. But no, I mean, I need those people to lean on, and so I'm a very, I guess, extroverted individual, and so I can't be stuck. Like COVID and stuff like that, like killed me because I was stuck in my home all day long, and I couldn't go out and take people to breakfast and lunches like I'm used to, and get to know them and hang out with them. And I would say that it really affected me, like my mental health. And so if I'm not with people and socializing and talking to them and hanging out and finding ways that I can help them or benefit them, it really hinders like what I do in my day and what I do in my week and what I do in my life. And so relationships are crucial to me. But with that being said, I mean, to maintain relationships or to really build them into where they develop into like a structured like partnership, I would say it's the cadence that you meet with people, right? And so if you don't have that FaceTime, or if they're not thinking about you, like I've built in my industry, we work with like insurance brokers, 401k advisors. We work with like CPAs and stuff like that. And so I've got relationships with like a bunch of different networks. But if I don't, talk about, accounting, or if I don't talk about a 401k thing within the deals that I'm structuring, I don't remember those people that I'm talking to and those partnerships and relationships that I have. And then on top of it, if I work with 10 different CPA firms and I don't see those people on a regular basis, I'm probably thinking about those CPAs that I've most recently met with or talked to when I'm meeting with my customers, right? And so I would say to maintain or to truly build deep relationships, it's that cadence or how often you're meeting with them. And so a majority of say if I have like 10 really strong partners, I'm meeting with them every single week. I mean, every single month. But there's some of them I'm meeting with every single week, and there's some that I'm even talking to and texting to daily. And so I would say, figuring out what the right cadence is to like stay in front of them and have you be top of mind for them as well is super important. So
That's good. Let's talk about your sales team here for a moment, and let's talk about
sure.
that motivation when they're losing motivation or when you've lost motivation in the past, and how do you build that motivation as a sales person? And then I want you to dispel some thoughts about sales, because everybody has their own thought about
Yeah.
sales. And then what your perspective of that is.
So let's go with the first question. Let's go one at a time. I'm
Yep.
not going to be able to multitask. So what's the first question you want to dive into?
About your sales team, and then creating that momentum, because there's a book by John C. Maxwell, the Leadership 101, and when you believe in somebody, it unlocks their unlimited potential. So I'm curious on how you unlock other people's unlimited potential and continue to help them stay motivated during the process of sales.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say that kind of goes with like my management style, which is fourfold. So the first thing I do is set expectations. So that's, the first thing, if you start a business or if you hire someone, you can call it a job description or quotas or whatever it may be. But we set those expectations, right? So if you were on my team, Nathan, and we were to work together, you and I would sit down, we'd set the expectations for the job. And then the next three things are I would connect with you. I would find out what makes you tick, what gets you excited, how you like to win, how you react when you lose. I would coach you to those things, and then I would hold you accountable to those things that I set in regards to expectations. And so when you do it that way, it's kind of you can't break it. It's like almost the perfect solution in regards to recycling, right? So if you always revert back to what those expectations are, and you're connecting with them on a regular basis and coaching them up to those wins and getting them excited about things, and then holding them accountable to that, I found it to be kind of the fail-proof cycle that works the best. And when it comes to managing people, because if they're falling short at say quota, say they have a 10,000 quota and they're at 2,000, it's almost the end of the month, then it goes back to going to those expectations and talking to them, and then it's coaching them, right? It goes right into that next step. So I'm going to sit down with them on their demos. I'm going to find out if they're not asking the right questions. I'm going to find out if they're closing too hard, or if they're not closing at all, or maybe it's just a simple thing that we found with some of our sales reps, that when they're leaving a meeting, they're not setting another meeting. But if I wasn't holding true to those four things in the way I manage people, I would never know those things. And so by sitting down with them and coaching them and sitting on their demos, I'm finding out those gaps and holding them accountable to them and helping them fix those things and making them a better sales rep and motivating them. I mean, this could be a long-winded answer, or we could probably talk about this for hours, but I'll recommend books like The Oz Principle, like I just talked about, or different, ways to coach them that way, or different motivational podcasts that I've listened to, I would recommend. But anything I can do to try and help them is what I'm aspiring to do. So
What you've listed there, those four key ways, really just to identify and create a solution for them and themselves, but also then for the environment around people. I think you've done a wonderful job, and it must show through here from the success of the company. Let's talk a little bit about the company and also how that provides a solution to people's needs. And let's ask one question at a time here. So, as a company owner, I'm coming to Jordan and I'm looking for an HR solution. What are some of the most, overlooked areas in HR that you have to overcome and create this solution, because it's an objection possibly from a company? So let's dive into that a little bit.
Yeah. So, it's usually the same scenario, and it depends on the company size, right? So we target more like the small to mid-sized client when it comes to like payroll and HR needs. And so when we talk to them, it really depends on that stage of where I would answer the question. But a majority of the time, they've started a company, they're an entrepreneur, they're passionate about something. And so whether they're selling a service or a widget or something online, whatever it may be, they're passionate about that, but they've never managed people usually. They've never started a business from scratch. And so the first thing we'll do is kind of a consultative approach. And we'll come in and we'll talk about from hire to fire, from cradle to grave, whatever you want to call it. But we'll dive in first and foremost on like how they're recruiting people, how they're like retaining talent, how they're onboarding those people, how they're managing them, what their current situation is and how they're doing those things. And when we do that, we uncover the holes that are missing or the gaps. And so whether it's they're with, say a simple like payroll solution, and we won't mention any names because I don't bash on the competitors, but say they're out there like a simple solution where they're just getting payroll services, but they need onboarding and they need a way to recruit people and they need a way to request PTO and stuff like that. Obviously, we're finding gaps right off the bat. And so it's asking those questions and taking that consultative approach and finding out what their true pain points are. And then we'll pivot and make recommendations and show them how we can do it within the software. But it always starts out with that consultative approach and those questions up front to understand their current situation and how we can help them. And then we'll transition to, showing them through the software how their life can be better by using Eddy. So
talk about hiring and firing. A lot of people have that on their mind as well. I know when I was managing WordBeam as we were building it, we had people we were hiring and people that we needed to get rid of. So I need to ask your perspective on that. And do you see any points at which the fire should happen or the hire, right? Do you guys help with that as well?
We do. Yeah. I mean, not every aspect of it, but we do help a ton on that. And so let's talk hiring first. It's hard right now. It's a crazy time we're living in. There's a lot of talent that's still out there looking for jobs. And then there's a lot of talent that are in current positions that aren't happy with their current job. It could be compensation, it could be culture, it could be their manager, it could be multiple things. But there's a lot of opportunities to hire people right now. There's a lot of opportunities to try and retain your employees and keep them. And people are asking for pay increases or whatever it may be, but there's a lot of that. But it's an interesting time because like I live in Utah, and in Utah, we're the 28th when it comes to the top 50 states in regards to compensation. When it comes to compensation in states like Washington's number 1, California's number 2, DC's number 3, New York's like number 4. And so with the pandemic and with the changes and things that have happened recently, those guys are really struggling to hire the talent in their current states, but they don't care if people work remotely, right? They could care less if people are in an office or if they're working from home like I am today. They just want to be able to have them to have the talents and abilities to accomplish this job at hand, and they'll hire them, right? And so with that being said, Washington will pay 60 to 80% more than Utah would, but they don't care if I live in Washington. And so they're trying to recruit that talent from Utah, vice versa, Washington City, New York, whatever. And so it's a really interesting shift we're seeing in the way people are hiring talent and retaining them, because they're losing employees to someone that's willing to pay them 50% more. But if you're in Washington and hire someone in Utah, that 50% more is still a 20% savings to them to recruit that talent. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so it's been really interesting. And then, I mean, depending on what industry you're in, or like restaurants, for example, I mean, we work with a ton of restaurants. Unfortunately, we're seeing them shut down because they can't hire enough people. We're seeing that they're having to go from, in Utah, the average fast food worker was making like $8 to $9 an hour. Now, in less than a year, they're making $15 to $16 an hour, so almost double. And so if you think of that perspective and what that's doing to the economy, they're doubling their wages. And so what does that do to their cost of food? Their prices are increasing. And so it's making some crazy stuff. But with all that being said, there's a ton of stuff that Eddy does to help with that, right? We have like an applicant tracking. We can post on all the different job boards. We can help manage their entire hiring process. We can onboard them and do some really cool things there, finding out like specific information like shirt size, where they like to shop, so that when their birthdays, anniversaries, or when they first hired, we can give them gifts and cool stuff like that. But this has been super top of mind and super relevant right now in regards to hiring and retaining that talent. But I would say the biggest thing is it's very difficult and it's very hard. But before you go out and recruit and go after that talent, I'd say the first thing that a lot of companies they focus on is their company itself, right? Make sure that you have a company that if you wanted to hire someone, you could go to your top 10 employees and say, hey, go post for me on social media, on your LinkedIn, on your Facebook or your Twitter, whatever it may be. And let's see what talent we can pull from your circle of influence. And you're going to get 10 times better candidates that way. And we can help you do that by posting on the social media with a click of a button. But I would say that a lot of companies need to focus on their company themselves and what they're doing and why people would truly want to work for them, and see if their employees are happy through whether you want to do performance reviews or what it may be. But find out what your culture is and what like reviews your employees would give you. And if it makes sense to have them, if it makes sense to even hire, because maybe it's you need to fix that before you start hiring. And then once that's fixed, you can really focus on your employees and recruit through them. Like your best talent is going to come from your employees. And so I know that was super long-winded, but I hope that made sense in regards to like focusing on the situation at hand, because this is something we could have a full podcast on for a year. Like talking about how to recruit and different industries and specific strategies. I love it. So I'm pretty passionate about it. But
Well, I can tell, and that's great for the audience here. And for everybody out there, I'd like to ask you, Jordan, do you guys use any tests? Would you recommend any type of tests for people, for personality, just to figure out who you're working with, really? Of course, a lot of people can put things out there, and then how do you really identify somebody who would make a good hire or would not make a good hire based on maybe a few key traits that you're seeing?
yeah, honestly, I mean, I believe in tests. I think they're great. We haven't got to the point in our company where we've kind of integrated or partnered with anyone to do those types of tests. I know we have clients that have put links and done that as part of their like applicant tracking or recruitment. They'll say, hey, these are the things you require, LinkedIn profile, resume, references, and then we want you to take this aptitude test or whatever it may be, right? And so we've definitely had clients do that, and we've seen success with it. And again, I'm a huge proponent of it. I believe in it. I think people should do it. But I would almost say, going back to what we just talked about, is more important than doing that is figuring out your internal team and your core team as you're kind of building out that culture, and then using your employees to find that talent. Because usually most people I know, they hang out with like-minded people, right? Your circle of influence is going to be people somewhat similar to you, right? And so if I can hone you in and bring you into our culture and trust you, and you trust me enough to refer your friends, I think you're going to get way better people that way. But the aptitude tests and the different things out there, I think they're awesome. I haven't used a ton of them. So being transparent.
No worries. Developing a culture of excellence. Let's touch on that. You said culture is everything, right? And I know going through establishing a mission for you individually, right? And then also you as a company is very important. So touch on culture and what that really means to you.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. We're gonna have fun here. I'm gonna throw back to you. What's your definition of culture? Oh, I'm curious to hear this. I'll share with you, but I'm curious to hear from your perspective what it is.
Well, what I typically do is I'll put down specific key metrics that people need to hit, right? So we try to reverse engineer all of it. We've got a culture of hard work, right? A culture of taking the initiative.
Sure.
So what I'll do is I'll write a creed and make sure that everyone is buying into that specific creed. And the creed is then attached to the specific goal that we all set.
Yeah.
So we're reverse engineering, and then we're placing each one of those different areas of really of importance. And then we'll touch back into that as a form of reflection as we continue to build and grow as a company. So how about I kick it back to you now that I gave you a little bit of feel?
No, I love it. No, I'm just curious because everyone has a different definition of culture, and I'd be on the same page as you. I would say that you're spot on. With Eddy and stuff like that, just kind of being personal, we've met with multiple marketing agencies and brand experts, and they've taken us through sorts like different tests and different we've had multiple meetings together where they'll just go through what does culture mean to you, what is this, and when it comes down to it, I think culture is obviously goes back to my management style a little bit. You have to set up those job descriptions or hardworking or different attributes that you guys are requiring, or what kind of talent you'd want to attract to your company, and the goals and everything like that. But when it comes down to it, culture is things like at Eddy, we have a lady named Mindy. She used to own a pie company in Idaho, Utah, and we stole her away, and she is now our full-time chef. And so Monday through Thursday, Mindy cooks for us. She cooks for all of us. She makes amazing meals, and we sit down as a team and we all eat together. That's part of culture, right? And so it's doing those types of things like that bring you together, and a place where you guys can talk about goals and work together. And so culture can mean so many different things. And what you said, I think that's the basis of it. That's where culture starts. But what your culture develops into is things like that, like Mindy's Cafe, or, we've been hiring engineers lately, and, engineers can go wherever they want if they're good right now. They're so hard to recruit. That's probably one of the hardest positions to recruit these days. But the question, 3 of the last 4 that we've hired asked us, and compensation, are you guys secure, all that kind of stuff? Do you have funding? but what they're really asking is, hey, is this going to be fun, right? and and so if we can portray like what we do, that we work hard, we hit our goals, we have fun things like Mindy's Cafe, we do trips and stuff like that, but we're having a blast while we're doing it. That's what they wanted to know. And so again, like I said, it's a loaded gun when it comes to culture, but I would say it's creating an environment where people want to work is the breakdown of it.
I agree, and I'll add to that. And it's your future self.
Yeah.
And it's your future corporate self.
Sure.
And that's what it really boils down to. It's about, setting that long-term vision, and then, getting buy-in from everybody else. And throughout the process, like you said, let's have fun with this. And another good question, because I've gone through this branding and archetyped, and where we hired an outsider consultant who had worked with Nike, and he was, developing his own social app. So he was very good at just marketing, understanding what's going on. So we brought him in, and he asked, well, what is your archetype? Like, why as an outsider, customer coming in, why would I love your company? Like, how are you going to make me fall in love? Because love is the emotion.
Sure.
And we want when people to see Eddy, I mean, you guys have the smile, right underneath the double D. Yeah. So it's like, okay, well, they must be a fun company. Not to mention the graphics and the font that you guys use. It's a little cloudy, right? So it has a curvature edge. So it's these little things that allow for people to see, even from the outside, not to mention the blue and white. It looks like it's on a cloud, it's happy. So things like that. And for everybody out there, it's these little intricacies while you're building your company or doing a rebrand or understanding what, have we fallen off the course of where our mission used to be? Do we need to have a course correction here? And that course correction is going to come through a reflection.
That's interesting. No, you're obviously detail oriented, I can tell. And so I love that you've kind of gone into our website and checked in those things, because there was a lot of thought and process that went behind creating that logo and doing those things. And we've revamped it like 20 different times. And that's kind of what we fall into. And I think we'll stick with it for a long time. But it's telling. And I love that you see that it is from the outside looking in, that it is a fun company to work for. So
it was just a quick little review, and I'm like, oh, got it. But it's further clarifying based on what you've said now about the company, right? And I can get now a sense of where you guys are at, why you've created what it looks like and feels like, and you're trying to portray that and then also attract the right person.
Sure.
I love the psychology of attraction and the ability to, bring in the right talent. And it's at the end of the day, it's really, like you said, do I like you or do I not like you? Do I like your vision or do I not like your vision? And like you said, okay, if the pay's great, which that's almost a given if you're trying to hire somebody, because the pay should be there, right? Within margin of 10 to 20%. And anyway, without going too far off, I think I could touch on that topic as well, just as much as you. I love it.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about it offline or something like that sometime. Because I'm passionate about that stuff. I mean, our motto is always hire great people and try not to piss them off, right? And
exactly.
So we can, if we're hiring the right talent, they're going to hire the right talent as well. And it just kind of it falls into place that way. So it works great. But no, I appreciate that.
Well, so let's talk about excitement. Let's talk about future, and let's talk about really some of the big projects maybe, or companies you guys have partnered with, or some future projections here. Because let's develop and design that future self, or that future state that we want to get to with Eddy, but also you personally, and then how you're going to take those steps in order to get there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a lot of exciting things happening at Eddy, and I feel like we're kind of a baby when it comes to being a business. We're 4 years in. We've just been super fortunate about going back to talking about culture, right, and hiring the right people. We have the best team. We're super blessed. I mean, we stole our CTO from Ancestry.com and a bunch of their senior level engineers, and so a team that's built out 2 multi-billion-dollar products is now building Eddy. So there's no reason not to trust them or know that they can't do it a third time, right? And so we're super lucky that way. But we're developing and doing some stuff that's kind of game changing in this industry, because in all reality, this market is super commoditized. I mean, when it comes to like payroll and HR tech, that they're all pretty similar, right? There's some that are a lot more archaic than others that have been around for 60, 80 years, and they need to be tuned up a little bit, right? There's some that are brand new that don't have enough depth behind them yet that to need some add-ons and things like that. But we're going to do some stuff that I don't want to talk about yet in regards to that, but we're going to build like a scheduler. We're going to build a benefit admin system probably eventually, and stuff like that. So we're building some cool core stuff. And so when I say that, like, we still have some Me Too products to catch up on to compete with the other space. But like when it comes to like, communication within the app and doing some cool stuff there. And then the biggest thing that we're doing is we're targeting what we call the deskless worker, which is pretty much anyone these days, right? So people don't sit at computers all day long. They're not at a desk all day long. They're on their tablets or their cell phones, right? And so we're going really robust and releasing our app to the public next month. And so that's super exciting. So people can come in, see pay stubs, request PTO, request time off, and just kind of have like the profile to reach out to different coworkers. But everything's going to be at the touch of their fingertips for like a small to mid-sized client, because even on like the enterprise level, they don't have that yet, like the Workdays and Namely's. But those solutions are anywhere from like $100,000 a year or more. And a 10, 20, 50 employee company can't afford that. And so the future of Eddy is targeting that small to mid-sized client, the 50 to 250. And even for me, I love the 50 and below just because I love entrepreneurs and people building stuff out. But giving them an incredible solution that's all in one place, that whether they're at their computer or at their cell phone, they can manage their company and their employees and do some pretty cool stuff with it. So that's kind of the future of Eddy and what we're building. But yeah, I don't know if you have questions on that.
You got me excited for Eddy. Awesome. Let's go. Well, hey, how about we do a personal question here? Where are you going, and what are some of the goals that you set for yourself? Do you have anything?
Personal goals. I don't know. My passion is my family is probably number one. Good. I'm married, have 4 kids. And so whatever my kids love to do, I kind of love to do. So my oldest is 12 and he loves to play football. And so I love to go and watch him and help coach if I can. My 2 girls are, 7 and 10, and they're obsessed with cheerleading. And so the future of there is like my 10-year-old's like, she could be on a college team. She's that good, right? She's, been doing it for like 3-4 years and can keep up with the girls that are 16 and 17 years old. And it's been pretty impressive. But, the future for them holds that next year I get to go to Georgia and Texas and Florida and go to their competitions. But, personally, my goal is to grow Eddy as much as I can and just help companies and personalize, like, I don't know, it's to take care of my kids and help them build their futures. And so if we get really nitty gritty, I guess other goals would be like, I love to mountain bike because of my car accident. That's the thing I can do. So every year I try and pick 2 or 3 races, and it's not to win them, but it's just to complete them and say I did them. And so I've got a couple of those coming up in 2022, but my focus is my family and building Eddy so we can get there. So
that's exciting. Well, I know, we've shared a wonderful conversation today. Thank you everybody out there for listening in on this podcast here with Jordan. Once again, this has been the Founders Odyssey podcast, where we help to create an educational community, inspire you as a founder, and also create a support for you on your journey. Tune in next time. And until then, we can't wait to see you again.